1963 saw the birth of anime, with 6 television series and 2 movies airing that year. Mighty Atom or Astro Boy premiered on Fuji TV on New Year's Day, and is the first popular animated Japanese television series to embody the aesthetic that later became familiar worldwide as anime. This show was released the same year in the US. It originated as a manga of the same name, produced in 1952 by Osamu Tezuka, who is often revered in Japan as the god of manga. In 1959, Astro Boy had a 65-episode live-action series. Tezuka entered the animation industry in Japan by founding the production company Mushi Productions. After enjoying success both in Japan and abroad as the first anime to be broadcast overseas, Astro Boy was remade in the 80s and again in 2003. The original series lasted for 4 seasons with a total of 193 episodes, final episode releasing on New Year's Eve 1966. At its height, it was watched by 40% of the Japanese population who had television access. Set in the year 2000, Dr. Tenma, a scientist working in the ministry's Department of Precision Machinery, loses his only son Tobio in a car crash. Out of grief, he orders the production of a super robot in Tobio's likeness. Though the robot is more advanced than anyone has ever seen, he's not pleased with it because of the fact that it doesn't grow, and in a fit of rage, he sells it to the circus. After this, he loses his job at the Ministry of Science and rarely appears again. He harnesses a complex relationship towards robots, believing that they should not be treated as humans but as slaves. In the circus, where robots exist, they are forced to participate in fighting tournaments, similar to gladiator battles. However, Atom wishes to be peaceful. Eventually, he runs into Professor Ochano Mizu, the man who succeeded Dr. Tenma as the head of military science, who treats them much differently than Tenma, being regarded as a saviour figure by the robots for his affection and kindness towards them that Tenma did not possess. After realising how advanced Atom is compared to the rest of the other robots, he sets him free from the circus, becoming a surrogate father figure to him. According to Tezuka, the main themes of much of the manga were that of anti-war, the preservation of nature and discrimination, which had emanated from his childhood experiences with the devastation of World War II. When the manga was to be made into an anime, lots of revisions had to be made, including simplifying the story to suit a less sophisticated, wider target audience that the show was aiming to appeal to. Only 104 of the episodes were aired in the US, with name changes. In one story from the manga, Tezuka expressed frustration towards the restrictions passed by American television networks on the adaptation of the Astro Boy TV series. The US version did not air an episode showing a dog being operated on, the producers believing it to be too cruel and grotesque. Tezuka criticised this as a hypocrisy, as the non-Japanese eat and kill animals in manners he described as grotesque. Tezuka added that many white people in Africa shot animals for sport, yet people in England spread false rumours about Japanese people eating dogs. At the same time, he created a world of the future, a place where mankind could possibly see itself somewhere not far down the road. Not a utopia, but a world where technology and humanity coincided, bereft of the destruction of war, yet still deeply influenced by social issues and societal fears. Rather than choose to ignore the worst parts of the scientific revolution, Tezuka chose to embrace them and showcase what could be possible if man gave it a chance. In that respect, Mighty Atom was more than just a show about robots, but was a look under the surface of the world we live in, a clever metaphor of all we know and what we might dream. This is not to insist that Atom was a happy fable about the beauty of technology. It was far from this, with Tezuka using the series to ask not only what next, but also to warn against the arrogance and loss of humanity in the face of scientific expansion. Scientists losing themselves to their work was a common theme in the series, alongside exploitation of machines and careless attitude around nature. Often Atom was asked to rectify these incidents, but just as often found himself confronting conflicts within his own emotions and ended up asking the same tough questions Tezuka asked his reader. While it's simple to just overlook these themes, or as many do when they explore the first anime, they are a part of the hidden depth found in Atom that allows it to maintain its appeal long after its conclusion. Undercutting costs proved to be the most challenging aspect to surmount. By operating his animated series at a cost far below production, Tezuka would see it aired but would also tax his animators, of which he was the principal one, to their limits. Even taking into account the cost-cutting measures of double shots, cells and static backgrounds that the show employed, it would never have turned a profit. Hence Tezuka was forced to seek out outside funding, an action which would not only change the face of Atom, but initiate the relationship between merchandise and series that pervades to this day. Given the popularity of the Mighty Atom manga series, finding a sponsor wasn't hard. In doing so, Tezuka was almost relinquishing some of the control he had over the character. In doing so, allowing it to become a blanket use on everything from chocolates to cheaply made toys. This type of early franchising would allow Tezuka to ultimately make ends meet, and would also force competing series to follow a similar route. These initial forays into sponsorship with would transform the relationship between commodities and advertisement. After Atom, companies would advertise and sell products by overlapping the commodity image with the character image. In October, with 97 episodes, saw the release of Tetsujin 28 Go, or Gigantor as it was known in the West. It was the first humanoid giant robot who was controlled externally via a remote control by the operator. Its setting was in the final phase of the Pacific War, with the Imperial Japanese Army developing the giant robot Tetsujin 28 Go as a secret weapon to fight against the Allies. However, Japan had surrendered before they could complete its construction. After the war, Dr. Kaneda, the developer of Tetsujin 28 Go, passed his robot to his son, Jotaro Kaneda. Yokoyama's Tetsujin was influenced by the artist's wartime experiences. This was through the bombing of Kobe in World War II. As he had written in Ushio magazine in 1995, when he was a 5th grader, the war ended and he returned home where he had once been evacuated from. The city of Kobe had been totally flattened, reduced to ashes. People said it was because of the B-29 bombers, and as a child he was astonished by the terrifying and destructive power. Another influence of his creation was the Vergeltungswaffen, a set of wonder weapons designed for long-range strategic bombing during World War II, as well as the idea that Nazi Germany had possessed an ace in its hull to reverse its waning fortunes. Work which inspired Yokoyama's creation was the 1931 film Frankenstein, which shaped Yokoyama's belief the monster itself is neither good nor evil. The series had mostly short plot points that never took up more than 3 episodes, but was generally more light-hearted than the anime that would succeed it. The series had mostly short plot points that never took up more than 3 episodes, and was usually more light-hearted than the anime remakes it would receive. Only 52 episodes were ever dubbed for the English broadcast, somewhat due to its dark content. In the US adaptation, which was done by Fred Ladd, who also did the adaptation of Astro Boy, all of the character names were changed and the wartime setting was removed completely. Shotaro Kaneda became Jimmy Sparks, Dr. Shikishima became Dr. Bob Brilliant, Inspector Osuka became Inspector Ignaz J. Blooper, and Kenji Murasame became Dick Strong. The series setting was pushed forward to the year 2000. The series became an immediate hit with juvenile audiences, though adult reactions were often hostile. The TV series would later be homaged by the movie The Iron Giant. The term Shotacon, focusing on the sexual attraction to young boys, is said to be linked to Shotaro from this series as an early example of archetypal boys the genre focuses on. In November, with 56 episodes, 8th Man, or Tobor the 8th Man, was released. Murdered by criminals, Detective Yoko Kada's body is retrieved by Professor Tani and taken to his laboratory, where Tani performs an experiment that has failed several times, and Yokoda is the 8th subject to have his life force transferred into an android body. For the first time, the experiment succeeds. Yokoda is born as an almond-skinned android 8-man, able to dash at impossible speeds, as well as shapeshift into other people. He keeps his identity a secret, known only to Tani and his police chief. Even his girlfriend Sachiko and friend do not know it's an android. Yes, before there was Robocop, and before there was the $6 Million Man, there was 8-Man. Supposedly he acted as the inspiration for these. He is considered the earliest cyborg superhero, predating even Kamen Rider, who became famous in the same year. As 8-Man, Hachiro fights crime, even bringing his own murderers to justice. He smokes energy cigarettes to rejuvenate his powers that he carries in a cigarette case on his belt, manly. In the manga, the detective is trapped in a warehouse and gunned down, similar to in Robocop, while in the TV series he's killed when he's run over by a car. The manga was presented as a series of short novella stories along with a set of one-shot stories. Many of the stories were edited down and adapted for the TV series. The North American version of the series is known as Tobor, the word Tobor being robot spelt backwards. Tani is referred to as Professor Genius, and 8-Man is changed slightly to 8th Man. The story content was clearly directed towards a wider audience, both young and adult. Due to changes in cigarette advertising laws in the 60s, the television characters were not allowed to be seen smoking. Due to this being a major plot point of the series, the show had to be removed from American broadcast. Building on Astro Boy, 8-Man helped to shape the trajectory of robot and cyborg heroes for the next decade. Also released in November with 86 episodes was Wolf Boy Ken. Unlike the enthusiasm presented by Tezuka in tackling new media exposures, Toei Animation, or Toei Doga as it was known at the time, was still deeply entrenched in the idea of creating a Japanese alternative Disney, lush films with deep narratives attaining theatrical glory. It wasn't until Mighty Atom began setting records and captivating audiences that Toei decided to jump in, because by that point the audiences had spoken and spoken loud. Ken is a young boy who was raised by wolves, similar to Mowgli from Jungle Book, in a jungle in the Himalayan mountains. One day a meteor hits his jungle, causing a drastic change, eventually leads to famine and a need for certain animals to relocate. Ken tries to help the animals as much as possible. Jack, a one-eyed wolf, doesn't like Ken because he's a human being. being. One day Ken saves Jack's life, and Jack later has the opportunity to let Ken die when he's bitten by a poisonous snake, but he decides to save his life instead. A mutual affair causes a friendship to form between the two, and they team up to save other animals and humans. The show is simplistic and light-hearted in atmosphere, which differed a lot compared to a lot of feature films at the time, adding a sense of whimsy to the series that led to its success. It wasn't as serious as feature films, and the air of playfulness the animators approached the show with gave the material a sense of authenticity and organicness that translated well to the screen. One looks at it as a landmark. The show also stands apart from its peers due to its origin. Unlike previous shows this year, it wasn't based on a manga. It was an original series specifically for television. This allowed for a great deal of freedom when creating the work, since story and art were all essentially first run. It also required a lot of improvising on the parts of the directors and animators, since the technology surrounding limited animation wasn't yet a science. It forced some of the crew working on it to fake their way through the process. Now it is difficult to understand these challenges, since the finished project is so clean. Unlike Atom, with a strong history, passionate creator and intimate atmosphere, in comparison Ken was quite splendid. Animators took their time out of their own project to devote to animating another person's child, approaching the material with gusto and creating a playful classic. Doggy March or Wan Wan Shushingora was released in December. The third collaboration between Tezuka and Toei Studios, it dealt with a typical Japanese story following Chinese and Western stories. Tezuka and Toei had different opinions. Tezuka had already started working on storyboard under the title of Shushingora of Forest. The general framework of the production was subsequently changed. The completed work reflected only few of his ideas. Although it is entitled Shushingora, the 46 dogs of this tale do not fight the enemy of their master. Instead, the show is about a homeless dog called Rock who swears to take revenge on a tiger named Killer in the zoo who had murdered his mother. The dogs in town, while troubled by the atrocities of Killer, then joined forces to support Rock. Changing the target of revenge to the murderer of the main character's mother made it easy for kids to emphasise on the character. Another reason for the change may have been Tezuka's strong desire to avoid any association of the concept of fighting for one's lord with fighting for one's country, a reflection of his wartime experiences. Wanpaku Oji no Orochi Taiji, also known as The Naughty Prince's Orochi Slaying or Orochi the Eight-Headed Dragon, is a Japanese movie and the sixth feature by Toei Animation, released in March. English dubbed versions have been released under numerous titles: Prince in Wonderland and Rainbow Bridge. Based on the Shinto myth of the stone god Susanoo's battle with Yamato no Orochi, the colour film was scripted by Ichiro Ikeda and Takashi Iijima and directed by Yugo Serikawa. It's considered one of the very best of Toei's features and a landmark in animation in general. This anime film tells the story of Susanoo as a cute boy. His mother Izanami has died. He is deeply hurt by the loss of his mother, but his father Izanagi tells him that his mother's now in heaven. Despite Izanagi's warnings, Susanoo eventually sets off to find her. He meets Princess Kushina, a little girl who he becomes friends with. Thinking she's beautiful and looks like his mother, she tells Susanoo that their other 7 daughters were sacrificed to the 8-headed serpent. Susanoo is so infatuated that he decides to help her family, protect her, and slay the Orochi once and for all. The show made it onto official recommendations of the Japanese Ministry of Education, as well as the Ministry of Health's Central Child Welfare Council. More recently, the film is well known for influencing the direction and design of the American animated series Samurai Jack. Zenin Buraku, a 23-episode series from September, 15 minutes each, also known as Hermit Village, was the first late-night series. Based on a manga which ran in an adult magazine weekly, is the longest-running manga with only one artist, being publicised weekly since October 56, and the longest-running strip ever in Japan. By contrast, Gogo 13 is the longest-running manga to be serialised in a dedicated manga magazine. The story was a romantic comedy taking place in historical China, and it was quite risque for the time. The characters were very traditionally dressed. Although the anime is hard to find, it has been rerun on Japanese television. Its intro and outro have appeared on DVD, and an episode has resurfaced on Nico Nico Doga. The series was in black and white, and a live-action movie was released in 1961. In August 2014, it was announced that the series would be placed on hiatus. The death of the artist in April 2015 means that any further chapters are in doubt. The only other series that released in 1963 is known as Prince Shizukon, which ran for 14 episodes and began in December. This is a lost series as there's no footage available for it. Seemingly, the show is about Native Americans. As of the moment, nothing more can be found about this series.